7 o'clock, right over here in the large conference room, right over here. Other announcements. Justin, I believe you have an announcement you'd like to make. Come on up here. Come on. Give Justin a round of applause. Yeah. Warm that up. There we go.
I've never stood up here before. So same thing that Brett just said, but for Python development. I run the Python meetup here in Chattanooga. This coming Monday, we're having basically the same thing Brett just said with the Elixir group, but for Python. And if any of you have heard of Flask, Django's brother, sister, whatever you want to say, we're going to be mentoring people. I built a web application in Flask and Python to do take in an article and then submit that to our subreddit once a day to help community involvement and get people talking about different topics they don't know about. So we're going to be building that out starting Monday afternoon at 6 o'clock in the small conference room that way. So if you're interested, we have a meetup link. Look up Meetup Python and you can find us.
Hey, we got a Floss meetup tonight at 6 o'clock tonight here, Accelerator Space. People have asked me what we're trying to do with the group, so I'll try to give the elevator pitch. So Adam Jemerson tonight will be presenting on scripting, which is sometimes you get stuck with trying to do whatever it is you develop in. A lot of times you find yourself on the command line, Mac, Linux, Windows has PowerShell now. So he's going to go through the things that affect Floss, which is free Libre open source software. People have asked me what the group is for, and the idea is not so much the next new technology, what we're going to be doing in the next few months here, and we meet every 2 weeks, by the way, so tonight is a meeting, then 2 weeks from now we'll have another one. The basic idea is how do we do free Libre open source? What is it? How do you get involved in it? How do you participate? How do you contribute? How do you give back to society for a development? We're looking at kind of a holistic thing where we say, okay, what is development? Of course, just a more generic thing of what, your language will be, what you pick is what you'd want to use. We're looking at things like testing. DevOps will probably play a part, but the holistic development pipeline from beginning to end. So you have an idea, you join a community, you contribute, you put back, but how do you also make some best practices while you're developing and doing everything you need to do to get that product out there. Tonight, 6 o'clock, same floor, Accelerator Space, Floss Group. You can find us on meetup.com/floss. I think Floss will work, maybe floss-cha.
That was a great stall right there. Wow. Yeah, that was wonderful. I forgot to give our speaker today the lapel mic, so it's always fun. All right. About ready, Jess? Maybe? Maybe? Are you ready? Ready to do this?
Yeah, I'm almost ready.
For anybody who doesn't know Jess, she's a facilitator at Center, the User Experience Design School, right here in Chattanooga. And she's going to come and give us a talk, if you don't know, about generating talk ideas, which is going to dovetail really nicely into an announcement we're going to be making in the next week about a new speaker curriculum that we're going to be rolling out over the next few months. Yeah, not too much more about that right now. Just give Jess a round warm of applause. Jess.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Welcome. My name is Jess Ivins. As Brett said, I'm a faculty member at Center, the UX design school here in downtown Chattanooga. I'm here to help you brainstorm speaking topics today. So I'm going to walk you through a process that's going to help you think of things that you've done in your career or even in your personal life that will give you ideas for public speaking, topics that you can speak about. So first and foremost, you can speak. And by you, I mean, yes, you, everybody here in the audience. You might be thinking, well, I'm just here for the food. I don't actually want to get into public speaking, right? And if you're not thinking this, it's possible that the person next to you is thinking this. Now, I would disagree with this sentiment. I think you do have something valuable to share with the community, even if you think otherwise. I'll tell you my personal story, just to show you an example. This was me back in 2011. I was working in Philadelphia at a high-profile agency called HappyCog. And as part of my job, I was expected to present to clients. So I was giving client presentations, and those presentations weren't going so well. One day, my boss sat down with me and said, look, your presentation skills aren't where they need to be, so I want you to get into public speaking so that you can get better at presenting. And my reaction was like, I did not have very much experience at all public speaking. I was not interested in getting up in front of a group of people. It was terrifying. And I even said to him, I don't have anything worthwhile to say. And he said, of course you do. We all do. So that's basically the instructions that I had. And I decided, okay, well, I'm going to do this. My boss isn't giving me much of a choice, and I know I need to get better at this. So I thought and thought about what I would speak about. And I realized after a while that I'm really interested in women's issues. I've always been a feminist, and I'm really interested in design. So why don't I bring those two things together and put together a presentation about designing for women? I was convinced that nobody was going to show up and nobody was going to care. And that was not the case. I gave my first presentation. It went really well. We had 50 attendees. This was at a meetup in Philadelphia. People were really engaged. The Q&A was really lively. People came up to me afterwards to ask me questions about the topic. And then people started inviting me to speak at more meetups about the same thing. So I ended up giving this same talk about designing for women over and over again in Philadelphia. And then I started getting invited to conferences. And then I started submitting the presentation to conferences. And within the next 2-3 years, I had spoken in many places around the US. I had spoken in the UK. So I've given a presentation in England at a UX conference there. I've also spoken in Canada. So I know I'm an international speaker. I know Canada's pushing it a little bit, but I did speak in England. And now, today, I'm a faculty member at Center, and presenting to a group is something that I do almost every day. I'm in front of the students leading discussions, facilitating activities. So I went from being terrified of public speaking, trying to convince my boss that I was incapable of doing it and I had nothing valuable to say, to becoming an experienced public speaker who's spoken all over the country and in different countries. And here I am in front of you today, in front of a group of people, and it's something that I feel comfortable with. This can also be your story. The workshop today is going to help you come up with things that you could speak about. The first thing that we're going to do is generate ideas. We're going to generate a lot of ideas. And these ideas will lead you to speaking topics. In the generation portion of this activity, I want you to focus on quantity instead of quality while you're generating. Now I'm going to repeat that. I want you to focus on quantity while you're generating ideas instead of quality. And the reason that we do this is because in brainstorming, the best way to generate ideas is to just get ideas out of your head as quickly as possible without trying to critique the ideas or without hesitating and wondering if they're any good. So in the generation portion, I want you to write down, I'm going to give you writing instructions in just a minute, but I want you to keep in mind that while we're generating ideas, that the goal is to get as much out of your head as possible. And we'll go through the ideas later to figure out which ones we feel are strong and which ones we want to go with. You're also going to generate ideas based on a series of questions. So I'll give you some prompts that'll help you come up with things. For example, I'll ask you, what have you done professionally in the past month? And the answers I'm looking for are things like these. These are some examples. Organized a Chadev meetup. Learned show and hide with JavaScript. Introduced agile retrospectives at work. Mentored a junior developer on CSS Grid. And interviewed 4 developer candidates for a position. Or wrote a blog post about Elixir. And what I mean by these type of examples is this is the level of specificity that I'm looking for. So you don't want to write down, I did JavaScript, right? Because that's just not very specific. But if you write down, I learned show and hide with JavaScript, now that's something more specific that we can really dig into later. So this is the level of specificity I'm looking for when you write down ideas. Does anybody have any questions so far? I'm going to give you instructions on how to get started, but any questions so far? Specificity or anything? Yes, I'm going to give you writing instructions in just a sec. Yep. So the first prompt is, what have you done professionally in the past month? You have 3 minutes to write down 8 things. This is going to go quickly, so that's why I mean, but you want to get things out of your head quickly. And get as close to 8 things as you can. You might not be able to fill out all 8. That's all right. You should have a sheet of paper and a pen. If you don't have one, just get up and grab one from an empty chair near you. And please use paper instead of laptops or phones. Any questions before I start the timer? Let those ideas flow. Okay, you have about a minute left. If you're still writing, go ahead and finish up your last thought. Or put one more quick thought down. Okay, we're going to go on to the next prompt. What have you done professionally in the last 6 months? Now the key here is you got to write down new stuff. You can't write down anything you've already written down. So you're really digging back into your brain here, letting the ideas flow. What have you done professionally in the last 6 months? Again, I'll give you about 3 minutes. The last one was what have you done in the last month? So now we're going to go back 6 months. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure. Back into the crevices of your brain. What were you doing at work 3 months ago, 4 months ago, 5 months ago? Let it flow out. Oh, I forgot to tell you folks, I have folders that you can lean on. I completely forgot to tell anybody, by show of hands, anybody would like one to lean on? I'll walk around and pass them out. So one. Anyone else would like something to lean on? Have about a minute left. If you're still writing, please wrap up your last thought or write down one more quick thought. The next prompt is, what have you learned or accomplished in the past 2 years? This could be accomplishments at work, things you had to learn that you couldn't do 2 years ago, new tools that you know how to learn, new tools that you know how to use. Anything you've learned or accomplished in the past 2 years. Also, you could think about like time management too. Maybe you've gotten better at managing your time. Maybe you've gotten better at work-life balance. Yeah, at this point, yeah. The question was, can it be personal and professional? And the answer is yes. Have about a minute left. Go ahead and wrap up your last thought. If your hand is cramping up, no worries, because this is our last prompt. This is the last bit of writing you're going to be doing for a while. This is, what soft skills have you accumulated throughout your career? And by soft skills, I mean anything that's interpersonal, anything about communication, meetings. Maybe you've learned to run more effective meetings, or maybe you've learned to write better emails that actually get a response from people, or maybe you've learned how to schedule fewer meetings and still get work done. Maybe you've learned how to work through conflicts with your coworkers. So think interpersonal soft stuff. About a minute left, a little bit less. If you're still writing, go ahead and wrap up the last thing you're writing. All right, at this point, you should have on the whole sheet, like both pages, you should probably have at least 20 ideas, somewhere around there, if not more, right? Now the idea is to narrow them down. So which ones do we actually maybe want to speak about? Like, probably don't want to speak about all 20 or 30, or however many you have. Let's go ahead and start triaging. I'd like you to, in the left-hand column, look at your whole sheet. Pick 3 things out of the whole sheet that you're really excited about and put a star in the left-hand column next to them. So things that excite you, things that get you really eager, that's something you'd be eager to talk about. Go ahead and pick 3 things and put a star next to each on the left. Three things from the whole sheet. So look at the whole sheet and pick three. 3 or 4. If you really can't decide, you can pick 4. Now I'd like you to look through the whole sheet again and put a little circle or a big dot, a dot that's big enough that you'll see it later, of things that you want to do more of. Pick 3 or 4 throughout the whole sheet, and you can pick the same things that have stars. You can pick different things. Pick 3 or 4 things you want to do more of and put a little circle or a big dot to the left of them. Lastly, I'd like you to pick 3 or 4 things that you feel really confident about and draw a little triangle to the left of them. Again, you can pick the same things that have stars and circles, or you can pick new things. Things that you're really confident in your ability to do. Now that we've generated ideas and narrowed some of them down, we're going to share. I'm going to put you in pairs, and we're going to share. I'd like you to pick 2 or 3 of your top-ranked ideas. The top-ranked ideas have the most symbols next to them. And I'd like you to pair up with a neighbor. Actually, you know what? Since we're a little short on time, pick 2 of your ideas and share them with your neighbor. And discuss them as speaking topics. So share 2 topics. Each person has about 4 minutes. This is going to go by quickly. I'll give you more time if we have it. But just ask your partner things like, okay, so as your partner's telling you about their speaking ideas, ask them, or as you're telling your partner about the things you want to speak about, ask if you were planning to attend this talk, what's one thing you would expect to learn? Or what's one question that you would expect me to answer in this talk? Or based on the topic I described, who do you think is the target audience? These are great questions to ask. So go ahead and find someone near you. There's an odd number of people here in this row and this row, so somebody might want to pair up. Somebody want to go over here or vice versa. Okay, folks, if you haven't already, switch to the other person. So if you haven't already, switch to the other person. Okay. Lots of talking, lots of sharing. Good stuff. All right. Hey, I can't get y'all to stop talking, which is pretty awesome. Hey. Hey, folks. So I hear lots of good stuff happening, lots of great conversation. It's really exciting. It sounds like you all are really sharing some good ideas. Before we wrap up, I just want to share out, maybe get 1 or 2 or 3 volunteers. Anybody want to share an idea they came up with that they're really excited about? Or maybe nominate your neighbor who you talk to share an idea that you think is really exciting. Yeah, go ahead.
So, parachutes take a diversity. How do algorithms impinge on? Like recently, Google found out they put 2 resumes out there, one with a male name, one with a female name, otherwise identical. The male person gets lots of job offers for 6-figure jobs, and the female person does not. And yet, I don't really think people sat around at Google and said, how do we rig this result? But it happens. I could go on for a long time about that. I'm hoping to pull that into a course. I need to pull into a course that would include people that have never written a line of code, but makes sense to them.
Nice. That sounds really interesting. Thank you. Okay. Good stuff. Anybody else have an idea they'd like to share with the group? Curious to hear what else y'all came up with.
So one of the ideas that I was kicking around was a talk about giving talks. I know a lot of people are very hesitant about public speaking and the preparation and just being prepared to be kind of on the spot, so to speak. And my wife is a Toastmaster, and so I've gotten in the bad habit of going to presentations at forums like this or at conferences and things and counting the filler words and looking at how they use pauses and how their presentation looks and things. And there's no one right answer, but there's definitely some things we could all do.
Thank you. Sounds like support for people who want to get into public speaking or get more proficient at it. Yeah, okay, nice. One more person, maybe hear from one of the ladies in the room. Really narrowing, that's my way of narrowing down with stars and circles and triangles. No pressure if you don't want to share, that's okay. Anyone else? Okay.
So in my last job, which is my most recent job, put in a predictive analytics platform for the idea was that, as everybody knows, newspapers readership declining.
Could you hold up the microphone, please? Thank you.
That newspaper subscriptions and readership are declining, and so how do we find the people that are really interested in it? And they don't raise their hand and say, that's me, but we do know people that look like that. And so we put in technology that said, okay, if they look like this and we marry other data to it, how do we find other people in the community similar, although they may not get the newspaper? And it was a tremendously powerful program. So the notion of predictive analytics and using it for customer acquisition and retention has become.
So using predictive analytics to for customer acquisition, absolutely. If I understood you correctly? Okay, retention, thank you. All right, this is good stuff, folks. I do want to wrap up so I can get you out of here shortly before 1. And what's next? You might be thinking, well, I'm excited about my topics, so now what? I will make my slides available. These are 2 books I recommend if you are getting into public speaking. Confessions of a Public Speaker by Scott Birkin and Resonate by Nancy Duarte. Also some resources here, and again, I'll make my slides available so you don't have to worry about capturing this right now. These are all resources that I find very helpful for public speaking and resources that we've shared with our students at Center because they do take a public speaking course. Also, you'll see the back of these sheets, there's an interest sheet. So I'd like you to fill this out and give it to Brett, the organizer, because he's looking for more speakers. And just because you fill it out and give it to Brett doesn't mean that you have to speak. It's just letting Brett know that these are the ideas you came up with, and he can follow up with you. This is not mandatory, but I would highly ask, or highly request that you just fill this out, give it to Brett on your way out. Brett has headphones on right now. He's in the back, but he will pop out. Or you can, I guess you can just make it in a paper airplane and throw it at him, and he'll get it that way. But it is the last sheet in your packet. And I'd really appreciate that, and I know Brett would too, because he'd really like to follow up with you about you giving one of these talks here at Chadev. So on your way out, please return the pens and the folders. There's a little bin here for pens, and if you have a folder, you can stack it right here. And that's all I have for today, actually. So thank you very much. Thank you. I really hope you're able to run with these ideas.